this whole fight week leading up was just the calm before the storm, so to speak. And I think a lot of people, including Dana White, were highly impressed with what they saw out of him at welterweight here in that main event, just taking out Donald Cerrone, who Adam has not done well in main events historically. And
Yeah.
this one, again, just another situation where he couldn't pull through. What did you make of that?
Yeah, I mean, he said this week the whole narrative about him not being able to win big fights is ridiculous. I know Dana White tried to sell that too, but it's true. I mean, in the biggest fights of his career, he's kind of come up short. He's also had a tendency to start very slow over time. I thought for sure that one of the best bets in that main event was over 1.5 rounds for a couple of reasons. I thought, Cerrone would be able to, withstand some of the power from Conor. We haven't seen it translate necessarily as much up to 170 in the couple of times he's been up there. So I thought Cerrone would be able to sustain some of those shots. I thought Conor would want to settle in a little bit. He talked earlier this week about the fact that he wanted to get some rounds in and get some time in the cage because he's been away for so long. So I thought he might try to settle into things, but when you land a head kick like that, it just kind of changes the complexion of the fight. And I think there's a lot of people want to talk about, Dana said several times, like Cerrone's not a shot fighter, all these other things. But listen, that's 3 straight fights that he's been knocked out. He clearly is losing his chin a bit. And so that happens. He's 36 years old. He's had a ton of fights, and I think we saw that a little bit.
Well, Adam, you mentioned to me on the walk over here that that's his kind of his MO, right? Doesn't win the big fight. So will history, I mean, we know about all these kind of accolades and these honors that he's aggregated over the course of his career, but when it's all said and done, when the books close, will history remember him as an all-time great fighter, or do you look at him as kind of like a B-level fighter that had his moments but never really was quite elite?
Yeah, he's that Hall of Good.
Yeah,
he's always been good. He's been a good fighter. He's got a ton of talent, a ton of ability, and he's been willing. I think at the expense of more success, he's been willing to just say, "Yeah, I'll take that." He hasn't picked and chosen opponents. He's like, "Oh, I fought this week. Oh, you want me to fight somebody in 2 weeks? Okay, I'll do that."
That's
and that's always
respectable.
remember.
Yeah, that's huge.
And I think he could have had a better record. He could have had a more success in his career if he didn't say, "I'm just that guy. I'm that guy that's going to show up." And so I think that's what he's chosen to do, and that's how he'll be remembered.
And historically, he's never been a guy that's like, I'm after that title. That's what I want. He's sometimes even said so far as like, that doesn't matter to him.
Yeah.
But
I'm a prize fighter. I fight for the money.
Right. And he's had these crazy 6-week turnarounds. And in leading up to this, I want to say he fought 6 times in 18 months ahead of facing Conor. So, Larry, when you've seen everything that that Donald's been through, and then just the demolition that Conor put on him, do you kind of agree with the sentiment that he should start thinking about retiring and stepping away?
I do. I don't think anyone looks at him as anything more than a gatekeeper now, and I mean, he's got a really great career to look back on and nothing to be ashamed of. I think it's time to hang it up. I don't think he has that killer instinct anymore,
Here's the problem. We said he fights for the money. That's what he does. He's always done that. He just had a kid not too long ago. In fact, we saw the kid, me and Sam were sitting over by the kid tonight. He signed a new deal that's much, much bigger than any deal he's ever had going forward. He's not going to let those fights just sit out there. He's got his next, 5-6 fights under this new contract. He's going to continue to fight those. And he's not going to make what he made tonight because of the, cut of pay-per-view and all those other things. But, this is as big a contract he's ever signed. And I think he's going to keep getting in there and keep fighting, and that's what he does. And you hate to see it sometimes with guys that fight way beyond when they should be fighting, but it's also going to be tough to turn down those big numbers.
At what point do you think Dana steps in and says, "Hey, it might be time for Cerrone to hang it up"?
He never makes anybody. He'll have that conversation, but even Chuck Liddell, he let fight like 4 or 5 fights, and that was his good friend. He let fight way beyond when he should have.
Well, that's what I thought was funny about Holly, because he said that the last time Holly fought, maybe time for her to hang it up, and totally different attitude about her this time. So.
Yeah, I mean, Holly was another fight in a situation where, we've seen her in a lot of big fights. This one a co-main for this card, UFC 246, and I hate to say that the rematch was a lot like the first fight between she and Raquel Pennington. It was one of those fights where it was very tactical, shall we say, and Dana even showed some frustration there.
That's a very, very generous
right,
way of
yeah,
characterizing that, tactical.
A lot of times that's what you hear when a fight is a lack of action. You'll hear that people say it was very tactical. But something that's happened between these two girls is I think they have a little bit too much respect for each other when they step in the cage together. And this one wasn't one that dazzled me out of Holly. She said up there in the post-fight statement that she's been going through a lot. She was nearly in tears there, but Adam, what do you think is next for Holly Holm after that?
Well, not a title shot, certainly. Listen, this is her third fight in her last seven or eight. I think 3 and 5 in her last 8, actually. So she's still got a ton of skill. She has, for the last 4 or 5 fights, been a much, much more cautious fighter. She's not she doesn't unleash her offense in a way that she used to. And she's always been a counter striker. So she's always had trouble. She's always looked less than stellar when somebody doesn't come right at her, because what she does is somebody comes right at her. Let's think the biggest example that people know, the Ronda Rousey fight, where, Ronda Rousey kept coming straight forward and Holly was able to counter, step aside, counter. That's what she does. That's her skill. And if you stay back and stay on the outside and don't come toward her, she has a lot of trouble. Today it was a different fight. It was her kind of clinching a lot, which I was a little bit surprised by, that she was able to do that. But I also don't think she thought Pennington was going to come forward. She was trying to press the action a little bit, and the referee allowed that to happen. So what you have is a very dull, boring, tactical fight, Heidi. So I think that's what we saw. So she's not going to get a massive opportunity, but there's still plenty of fighters, in that 3 to 7 range that she can beat. They'll have good fights against, and I think they'll throw one of those out there.
What did Dana say? 3 minutes of clinching?
There was 4 in each round. 4 minutes of each round was clinching. It pretty much was. That's
he was not happy with the way that fight was officiated.
Yeah.
I cannot blame him.
Yeah. That's. I mean, a lot of times that is on the official. Like you want to see them work. You want to let fighters work, and I think when it's on the ground, if somebody's in top position, a lot of times I'm less apt to call for stand-ups, because I think that's just fighters working and trying to get to better spots, and they have an advantageous position. But in the clinch, really nobody has an advantageous position. It's just they're just tied up. And at that point, that is when it's on the ref to be like, all right, let's go. Step out here. And I will also tell you, referees look at the clock, and they're not supposed to, but they do it. And when it's right around a minute left in a round, they'll go break it up. And that's what they do. I think